What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're doing the review of the Puma Fuse training shoe. Alright guys, so this is Puma's first foray into a true strength training shoe. They have some other training shoes on their website, but this is their first one that's for dedicated strength training. And they have a lot of cues taken from a lot of the other popular training shoes on the market, and they kind of have their own Puma spin on things with this shoe. So first off, the upper is comprised of a couple different materials. There's a high tensile like nylon mesh material around the vamp or toe box of the shoe that's got an overlay on top of it, and then you've got the Puma logo that's reversed on the side of the shoe. The ankle collar on the shoe is very soft and flexible. It does have a little bit more padding around like the back part or Achilles part, and then it's got this little clip right on the back of it that has a heel pull tab, which should give you a little bit more support in that area. And then you actually have a TPU heel counter that runs around the back heel part of the shoe. There's a little bit more EVA foam at the back part of the shoe. And then of course you've got a Puma grip outsole, which is very grippy. There are some flex grooves in the forefoot, so when your toes hit the ground, this forefoot area will splay under load, and it's very, very flexible. There's a good amount of ground feel at the very toe part of the shoe. The laces themselves are some like cushion laces. They're not bad, they stay tight, so I can't really complain about them. There's some overlays for where the laces go into the shoe, and the lacing system's pretty basic, so there's really nothing going on there, but it's not bad. The tongue on the shoe has kind of a weird big shape to it, and has a kind of cheap feel to the material that they used. I don't particularly care for it, but it's not awful. At least it doesn't really go sliding around at all. The mesh material in the vamp of the shoe is pretty flexible, but there's no stretch to it. The toe area of the shoe is very tight, and I'll talk about the fit later, but the toe area, yeah, it's a little bit constricting on the shoe, and the shape of it is very flat. This little stitching on the side where the Puma logo like ends, I guess, or starts if you want to say that, is also not the greatest placement. You'll actually feel that on the side of your foot when you have these shoes on, which I think they could have done without that little bit of stitching and just had an overlay for the actual Puma logo. So since this is a dedicated strength training shoe, you do have some raised sidewalls on the outsole, so you have more protection against the rope. There's some on the lateral side, and then there's a bigger patch on the medial side. So that's where you're going to want to channel the rope through, and I think it worked well enough. It grips the rope okay. And then when we go inside of the shoe, it actually has a drop-in midsole. One of the very few training shoes that have a drop-in midsole. Obviously we have the Metcons, we have the high elite trainers, and now we have the Pumas. Now the difference with the Pumas compared to all of the other ones is that the drop-in midsole of the Pumas is fairly thin. The material is pretty cushioned, it's pretty responsive. The toe area is not super thick, and I actually like that about the shoe. I think that the midsole stack on the shoe being a little bit thinner works for this shoe, and it makes it actually have a more connected feeling to the ground than some of the other shoes that have a drop-in midsole. Now if you look inside of the shoe, there's really nothing between the outsole and the drop-in midsole. There's just a little bit of fabric lining it. So I mean, technically I guess you could use these shoes without the drop-in midsole, but you would be taking out a major component of the shoe's construction if you were to take it out and use it with like some custom orthotics or something. So I would not recommend that you guys do that. The drop on this shoe is 4 millimeters from heel to toe. And then when I weighed the Puma Fuse, they came in at 13.5 ounces for a men's size 10. So it was a little bit heavier than I expected, but also they're not the heaviest shoe. So I would say that they're kind of right in the middle. So when you guys go to size your Puma Fuse training shoes, I'm going to recommend that you go half a size up from your normal training shoe size. So I got these in both a 10 and a 10.5, and the 10s were rough. I wore them. I actually eventually broke them in, but for the first few days, man, they were brutal, and they're still very, very tight in the metatarsal area. The whole other part of the shoe, like the ankle collar, the midfoot of the shoe, they're not bad, but the toe box on the shoe is so tight because this material, it just doesn't really have any stretch to it. It flexes fine, but it has no stretch to it. And then it's very flat at the toe box. So if you have wide toes or like wide metatarsal joints, this is gonna be a hard shoe to wear. Even the 10.5s were very tight when I put them on. They broke in a lot faster, but they're still pretty tight in the metatarsal area. So I'm gonna say, if when you guys go order these, maybe order a couple sizes and return the one that you guys don't want. For me, I say the 10.5 is the best way to go for me. Even though I was able to break in the 10, I'm gonna go with the 10.5. A word of advice is to just go by your European size. So the 10 was a 43 European and 10.5 was a 44 European. Typically, all of my shoes are a 44 European. So I would go with that besides the US sizing. So flexibility is definitely the strongest suit of the Puma Fuse. There's really no areas on the shoe that do not flex. All the way from the toe to just about at the heel where the TPU heel counter is, but you wouldn't want it to flex back there anyways. The shoe kind of has an innovate feel to it with a little bit more chunkiness, I want to say. I thought running in these was surprisingly good. Like, they wouldn't be my first choice to do runs in, but I think for any like CrossFit workout, for 100 meters to up to maybe even like a mile, I think that these would be fine. They're low to the ground, which I like. The cushioning's okay. They're pretty responsive, but they are a little bit heavy. Things like double unders and box jumps, I thought they were pretty responsive. I never really had any issues with like comfort. So I thought that the shoe was okay to do those movements in as well. The only thing that I didn't like doing in these shoes, which is kind of surprising, is like burpees because of the toe area. When I would go down, it would pinch my toes. And I don't really think that that was very comfortable in these shoes. But otherwise, like, the shoe is overall very flexible. So, I mean, if you don't have that pinching issue with these shoes, then I think that you're gonna really like doing like plyometric movements or running in the Puma Fuse. So when it came to lifting in the Fuse, I thought, once again, that they were just okay. I think the shoes have an unbalanced feel to them because the toe box is so tight, and then the ankle collar is pretty loose feeling. So when you get these shoes, even if you don't have heel slip, I have absolutely no heel slip at all in these shoes, but I would recommend using the top loop no matter what, because it'll just secure the ankle collar of these shoes just a little bit more. No matter what, just the ankle area on the shoe just feels loose, like there's not a lot of support there, and then the toe box is very, very tight. Plus the drop-in midsole, despite it being only a 4mm differential, it feels like the heel of the shoe is a lot higher than the forefoot of the shoe. I really like that the forefoot has a lot of ground feel. The toes feel close to the ground. When you go to do like cleans and Olympic weightlifting, I felt like it was easy to get planted and to jump and everything, but then landing was a little sketch in these shoes because of the amount of midfoot flex that they have and just how loose the ankle is. I actually tweaked my ankle doing a clean in these shoes, which I don't think I've ever done in any other shoes before, or I can't remember or can't recall a time where that happened. Squatting in these shoes was okay. I felt like I was getting pushed forward just because of the amount of flexibility in the midfoot of the shoe. I wouldn't be, trying to do 1 rep maxes in the shoe, but I think I could push the shoe up to a 90% squat. For deadlifts, I thought they were okay as well. I didn't feel too disconnected from the ground. They felt generally flat enough, so I wasn't high off the ground. Once again, I wouldn't pick these first for deadlifts either, but they should be okay. So one thing that I thought that these shoes did really well was dumbbell box step overs. And I know that's a very niche movement, but the grip on these shoes on top of the box was excellent. Plus the flexibility just kind of works for you, and then there's no loss of like ground feel or anything. It was just a surprisingly easy movement to do in these shoes. I know it sounds like I'm not really excited to use the Puma Fuse for training, but when you factor in that these only cost $90, I think you can overlook a lot of the shortcomings. They're not the greatest shoe, but they're also not a bad shoe. And at $90, I can't really think of anything else that I would buy to train in. It's a really low price point. And I know that this is Puma's like first functional strength training shoe. So I think that they went pretty aggressive there, and I think it's gonna actually work out for them because it's $90. We're used to spending $130 on a pair of shoes and not batting an eyelash. If you were looking for something that was a little bit more on the flexible side and more off, you wanted something that was just different than anything else on the market, then I'd say the Puma Fuse are a pretty good pickup. Personally, I think that these shoes are pretty good looking. They look, to me, completely different than anything else on the market. I know some people think that they look like Nano 10s, but I honestly don't see it. And if you wanted something different for $90, you know, it's not that much to spend. I'd say buy these shoes from a place that has a pretty good return policy just in case you wanted to return them. But otherwise, I think that for $90, you can overlook a lot of the shortcomings, and it's still a pretty decent training shoe. If you guys have any questions about the Puma Fuse, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And as always, guys, make sure that you guys hit that like button if you like this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Do that like right now. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.